Alright, now as I mentioned in the introduction, we have a poster for inspiration. And this is a poster that the coaches give us. It says, I want something like this. So in this case, the softball coach gave me this Oklahoma Sooner poster from 2016. So while hopefully it's not plagiarism, I am going to use this for inspiration and do a lot of the things that are in this image, but it's going to look a lot different when we're done. I just wanted you to see this, and we'll be referring to it quite often. So the first thing we're going to do is create the file itself. And to do that, we just go to File, and New. And it comes up with this new document dialog box. And basically, if we go to, I think it's under Photo that I created these. Not under Photo, must be under Saved. I created one for a banner, an individual poster, and then I created one for a poster. And all you have to do is put your data in here and then say you're going to save it as a preset, and it will pop it up here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this 18 by 24. That's the size, standard poster size. That's what we always create for Rockwall. I say always, there's been a time or two that we've deviated from that, but the standard really is 18 by 24. And I use 300 resolution, RGB color. We're going to make it a black background because if you notice over here in this image, it is a black background. So we're going to start with that. And it's Adobe RGB, and always leave it at square pixels. So I'm going to create this, and we're going to call it RHS Softball 2023. Okay, so if I click Create, it creates a file over here, RHS Softball 2023, and it creates it with a black background. So if you look over here, my next step is going to be to create these this little bit up here. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create this banner up here and then into the spotlight, and that's going to be basically where I start. So actually I have already started on this poster. One of the things that I try to do is get some information from the coach well before the session so I can begin to work on the poster and have it in a state where I can bring the girls in. So I actually have already started on the posters. You can see I've done some things here with the text to try to make it look a lot like this. But I'm not going to start over here, and we're going to start from the very beginning, and then as we move along I'll show you other things that I have done and how I came about doing them. But I spent about, I don't know, an hour putting this together one day to try to get it ready so that whenever we did the session and I extracted the girls out to put them in the poster, that it would be ready for them. So it's about, I don't know, 50% done. The rest of it, I think, is going to be bringing in the roster and adding a few little highlights and few final things to make it look the way that we want. But I started with a black background. Like I said, I created this just using the file New and created a 18 by 24 black canvas. And then I decided the first thing I wanted to do was create the little title box that's up here. If you go over here and look at the poster, you'll notice that it has a little bit of a title box here that kind of fades out on the bottom. So what I did was I created that, and what I did was I created a box. If you can look over here at the layers, I created a box and I just filled it with black. And then I took that box and added a stroke to it using layer styles. Just click here. You can see the stroke that I added in here is a 5 pixel stroke. It's on the outside and it's this gray color. Okay, and then what I did was in that same layer style dialog box, you have to select this layer mask hides effects so that you can use a layer mask to erase part of it or mask part of it. So I did that, and I selected a mask, and I did a gradient at about 80 to 90%, and just got rid of the bottom bar. So, and then you can see how it fades these ends of this one so that it looks a little bit like this. Now that's just a beginning point, and we'll see if it needs to be adjusted after that. The next thing I did was create this top bar that up here where it's got 2016 Oklahoma softball, and it looks a little different, but I think it works out. And what I did was I created this box, took it across, and created a bevel and emboss, stroke, and a gradient overlay. So if I double click here, you'll see bevel and emboss, and I did a stroke bevel and stroke emboss, and these are the measurements or the contents of how I created it, the size and soften and so on, to create that kind of a look. And I filled it with orange, which you'll see later, and then I did a stroke. So I should have showed you that. This stroke here, I did a 5-pixel stroke on the outside. I did a gradient overlay, and this gradient overlay was with orange and a light orange. Double click there, you can see light orange and dark orange, and it gradates across it using the reflective, and I did it 35%, 90%. So it worked out pretty good. And that's pretty much it. It created this little bar across here for me to be able to put the text in. So then I went and I added the text here, and the text is it's a Avenir Next condensed. It looked like it was pretty close to what they use, and we can always change the font if we need to. But I added a bevel and emboss on it and a stroke, and the bevel and emboss was an outer bevel because I wanted it to look like it's punching out, chisel hard, depth of 74, size 7, and soften of 1. So it gave it this kind of a look, and I think it looks really good. It looks a lot different than what they have on their poster, and we may have to work with that. In fact, it's a lot smaller too. It may need to be a little bigger, and we'll get back to that and see if that's what we want to do. And then I did the into thee, and the into thee has no layer style at all on it, which we'll probably go in and change. It's a lot smaller too than what we really want it to be, and it was also the Avenir Next Condensed Regular. It's 19 points, so I think that's going to need to be a lot bigger, and we'll work with that in a second. The spotlight, we brought the spotlight in, and it is this color orange, 116 point Boomer Tantrum. And I think there's a better one out there that we can use, and we'll see if we can switch over to that, and I'll show you that in just a second. But it's 116.64 font size. It also has bevel and emboss and a stroke. And if you look, it comes up here. There we go. This bevel and emboss, again, it's a stroke emboss, smooth, and so on. These are the characteristics. Punches it out a little bit. I may want to work with that some. We put a little bit of a gray stroke around it. I think that really accents it real well. It's outside 9 pixels past the 100%. So this is where I am. This is where we're going to start. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to move the spotlight down a little bit, and I'm going to make this into the bigger. So we're going to come here, and I've got spotlight highlighted. I'm going to go to my move tool. I'm going to press my shift key, and I'm going to drag this down here, and we're just going to move it down something like that for the moment. And we'll come back in here, and now I'm going to click on the into thee, and I think the into thee needs to have some bevel and emboss on it. And I don't know that it necessarily needs a stroke, but I'm pretty sure it needs a bevel and emboss. So I'm going to double click on it and do that first. Actually, over here I want to double click on it. So there we go, double click over here. Open this up. I'm going to go bevel and emboss, and right off the bat we have a stroke emboss, but I'm going to probably make that a outer bevel right off the bat. Now it's kind of thick, so I don't really want it that big. So what I'm going to do is go chisel hard, and then I'm going to bring the depth down quite a bit in here, something like this. I think that maybe in that area, and I think I need to go ahead and make it bigger before I go any further. So let me do that, and I'm going to, there's a couple ways to make it bigger. You can click here or double click and just increase the size. Now we'll need to pull this down a little bit if we're going to make it bigger. So let me just do this, and I want to make it pretty big, something like this. Let's see what that looks like. So if I just click anywhere, it's going to do that, and I'm going to press shift, and I've got the move tool, and I'm going to pull it down a little bit, like right in there somewhere. So what does it look like over here? I just want to make sure we're onto the same track. It's not as much space in between, but there's more space in between the letters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click. I'm going to take this and I'm going to bring it down some like this. Oops, didn't mean to do that. So something like that, and then I'm going to highlight them, and I'm going to go over here to the character, and I'm going to spread them apart, something like that. Make them a little skinnier, something like that. So then I'm going to click anywhere, and we have this, and I think that looks pretty good. If we look at this, this is a little squished a little more, not quite so tall. So it just depends. I mean, I don't have to make it exactly like that, but I can squish it down if I want to. And there's a couple ways to do that. I can do it with these tools, or I could just do a Command T, press Shift, push it down, and it's going to squish it down a little bit. So I think that looks pretty good. So now we have this into the, and I may still want to make it bigger, but we'll look into it. So that looks pretty good. So now we have Spotlight. I think Spotlight has the wrong font on it. So I'm going to change the font, and we're going to go to this Acumen Pro Condensed. I kind of like that. And with that, now they're all really squished together. So I need to come in here and spread them apart. So I'm going to take this, spread them apart a little bit, and then I'm going to take this and we're going to make them skinnier again, closer together. You can see that they're skinnier, but now I'm going to make them farther apart again. Actually, I want them just kind of barely touching. So with that, now they're too skinny. So what I want to do is press enter, and now you can see, yeah, it's just too little. So what I'm going to do is make the entire thing bigger by just using the free transform tool. And I think they're too skinny, so I've gone too far with that. So I'm going to come in here now, press enter, and I'm going to do it again, highlight, and then I'm going to come in here, and I think they're too skinny, so I'm going to make them a little bit bigger. I'm going to make them touch a little bit better, a little bit wider, and just kind of playing with it here to get it the way I want it. So that looks pretty good, I think. So I'm going to hit enter, and we're getting pretty close. So I don't have to be exactly like the other one. You know, this one, they're kind of shorter, so maybe I can still make them closer together, and I can also make them a little bit squished a little bit. I think I'm going to do that too. So I'm going to come in here. I've got that highlighted. I'm going to Now that I've got it like this, I'm going to squish it a little bit. Come on. Yeah, there we go. So I like that. And I think we're going to stop with that right now. So that is where we are getting ready to go into the next step. Now, what is the next step? If I look at this, you have these lights. We could either start with that, but I think I'm going to throw these chevrons in there. They're pretty easy to do. So we're going to do that first, and then we'll tackle the highlights, or the spotlights up here. All right, and we'll be there in just a moment.